Hey everyone, Liam back again here with another video, this time on the science behind muscle hypertrophy and some practical applications. So, let's dive right in. Let's start off with a definition. Muscle hypertrophy simply means increasing the size of a muscle cell, which means bigger muscles. We of course do this through resistance training, but how? In his 2010 paper, Dr. Brad Schoenfeld outlined three mechanisms of muscle hypertrophy. Those are mechanical tension, metabolic stress, and muscle damage. Mechanical tension is the amount of tension that is placed on a muscle, which can be executed through active tension, so like contracting a muscle, and passive tension, so like a stretch without any contraction. Taking a muscle through its full range of motion will expose a muscle to these tensions, and this tension can be increased through lifting heavier loads over time, progressive overload. Next we have metabolic stress, which is simply the pump or the burn you feel when performing exercise. This pump is created by several factors, and for the sake of this video, the main ones are lack of oxygen in the muscle, so hypoxia, accumulation of metabolic byproducts like lactate and hydrogen ions, and restriction of veins resulting in blood pooling from repeated contractions. And finally, we have muscle damage, and this is created from new exercise or exercises that have a large or exaggerated eccentric, so the lowering phase of a lift. This then creates strain, which is of course damage to the muscle, and this is experienced as soreness the next few days. These three mechanisms are not independent, and they actually interact with each other to produce muscle hypertrophy. Alright, so now that we know the mechanisms of muscle growth, what exactly can we do about it in training? Well, we know that volume is likely the most important variable for muscle growth, shortly followed by intensity or how much you're lifting relative to your max. It has been seen that muscle hypertrophy follows a dose-response relationship with volume. We also know that there is a point when any further volume has diminishing returns with how much hypertrophy can occur. This is called your minimum effective volume, or MEV. This can be thought of as the minimum amount of volume you need to perform to make good noticeable gains. From this point on, the rate at which muscle hypertrophy will occur will slow down despite performing more volume. There is also a point where if you perform too much volume, you also begin to lose gains. This is known as your maximum recoverable volume, or MRV. If you are a beginner or an intermediate, staying in your MEV is totally sufficient to make the gains you are looking for. There is no concrete number for this, but it's somewhere around 10 sets per week on average. Only approach MRV when you are advanced. Again, no concrete number for MRV, but on average it's somewhere around 20 sets per week. Okay, so we know volume is important and have some numbers for that, so how about rep range? Well, we know rep range is actually largely irrelevant and hypertrophy can occur really at any rep range as long as sets are taken close to failure. But practically, one is not really going to consistently do heavy sets of 3 or, sets of 30 to failure, as fatigue would just be way too much over time. So staying largely in the 6 to 15 rep range makes the most sense as it strikes a balance between intensity, so your load lifted, and volume per set. A good rule of thumb is to stay in the 6 to 12 rep range on compounds, or as low as 5 if strength is a goal, to make it easier to perform progressive overload, and 10 to 15 on isolations to focus on pumps. So we now have an idea of volume and rep range, so what about frequency? Well, basically all we can say for sure is at least 2 times per week is better than 1 time per week. More than 2 times per week has yet to be consistently seen as better than 2. Alright, now let's apply this and look at how we can design a program for a beginner or intermediate lifter. We know it's 10 sets per week per muscle, hitting them twice per week, and staying primarily in the 6 to 15 rep range. That means 10 sets per week for the chest, back, quads, hamstrings, glutes, and delts. Although, beware for the glutes and delts as they are involved in the exercises for other muscles. Glutes are involved in the squat for quads and any hip hinges for hamstrings, and the front delts heavily in any chest exercise, and the rear delts in any pulling movements. Squats and any hip hinges would count as sets towards glutes, and I wouldn't worry about hitting front delts directly, and only worry about the side and rear delts. Since biceps and triceps are hit indirectly in pulling and pushing exercises, they don't need 10 direct sets and probably only need 4 to 8 weekly sets of isolations. Same can be said for abs and calves. So a practical program would be an upper-lower split, which hits everything twice per week. Each lower workout hits 5 sets of quads, 5 sets of hamstrings, 5 sets of glutes, and optional abs and calves for 2 to 4 sets. Each upper workout hits 5 sets of chest, 5 sets of back, 5 sets of shoulders, and 2 to 4 sets of biceps and triceps. I think the majority or 3/4 of your volume for quads, hams, glutes, chest, and back should come from compound movements, then isolations for the arms and delts. In terms of nutrition, all you really need to worry about is eating enough protein, which is somewhere around 0.8 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight, eating a slight caloric surplus, which is 100 to 500 extra calories a day, and aim to gain around 1 to 4 pounds per month. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video helped kind of clarify how to build muscle, how to set up a program for intermediates and beginners, and I wish you all the best in your journey building muscle.